Have you ever had the feeling that you are doing everything right in the financial market, but for some reason, you never make any progress? It's as if you're in the game, with an open account, a chosen fund, a monthly contribution slip, and yet nothing is evolving. If this has ever happened to you, stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover may surprise you, and perhaps explain why so many investors spend years stuck on the same level, believing they are moving up. Truth is, there's a very well-constructed illusion right at the entrance to the financial market. A shiny showcase with beautiful products, elegant packaging, sophisticated names, and a seductive promise of security. Banks and brokerage firms know exactly how to present these beginner products in a way that seems professional, strategic, and even advanced. But in practice, they're designed for one thing only: to keep you where you are, not where you want to go. It's hard to admit this, but it's even harder to realize that nobody talks about this trap. Almost nobody notices it, because the market doesn't want you to. And it's not a conspiracy theory, it's business logic. A basic investor is predictable, profitable, and rarely questions the hidden fees, the expensive funds, the package structures, or the real reason why they never see their wealth building truly accelerate. And while you believe you're making progress, the real feeling is like running on a treadmill. You get tired. You dedicate yourself, you do everything perfectly, but you remain exactly at the same point. Have you ever experienced this? That feeling that everyone talks about accumulating wealth, but for you the numbers always seem too small to make a difference? The problem isn't you, it's the level of the game you've been placed in. There's a very well-protected layer of the market where real opportunities begin to appear, but this layer doesn't reveal itself to those still using the initial products. Those that seem sophisticated, but were designed to be a kind of invisible ceiling. It's as if there's a door, the shark door, that simply doesn't appear, while your behavior and financial choices are still driven by the standard products the market pushes. And the more beautiful the packaging, the more dangerous the product can be for those who truly want to build wealth. Funds with high fees, ready-made portfolios that charge a lot for delivering little, packaged products that seem advanced but actually function as financial leashes. And nobody explains this to you at the beginning, because the beginning wasn't made to liberate you. It was made to hold you back. What almost no one tells you is that this constant feeling of stagnation isn't a lack of effort, but rather part of a system. A discrete, efficient, and silent system. But when you understand the mechanism, something begins to change. And it's precisely here that our conversation today starts to get interesting, because there's a point where the illusion begins to break. And it's about this crack that we're going to talk about now. And as that crack begins to appear, something inside you also changes. It's as if, for the first time, you realize that perhaps the problem was never your discipline or your ability to invest, but rather the scenario you were placed in from day one. And when that realization arrives, it's usually accompanied by a mixture of relief and indignation. Relief at finally understanding why your results never accelerated. Indignation at realizing that no one ever told you this before. And since we're talking about something so silent and yet so real in so many people's financial lives, I want to take this moment to ask you something important, but in a way that makes sense, as part of this conversation we're having. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below about what touched you the most, or even if you've ever felt that sensation of running without getting anywhere. Your experience could help someone else who is exactly at that point right now, feeling alone. And if you're here thinking, wow, that's exactly what happens to me, then don't forget to like this video. It seems simple, but it's this gesture that shows YouTube that this type of content matters, that there's a real community wanting to learn to see beyond the surface, beyond basic products, beyond the golden illusion of the beginning. Your like helps the algorithm push this conversation to more people who need to hear it. And of course, if you want to continue this journey with me, if you feel that these reflections help you break through the wall that the market has built around you, subscribe to the channel. It's not just a button. It's a way of saying, I don't want to stay stuck at level 1. I want to go through that invisible door. That's how we build a community that no longer accepts being treated as a beginner forever. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of content. It really matters, because the more people understand what's behind beginner products, the harder it becomes for the market to keep that illusion going. And while you leave your comment, your like, or decide to join us on this journey, I want to take you a little deeper in the next part, because now that you've begun to see the trap, you need to understand exactly how it was built around you and why it works so well. This is where many people begin, to realize that there's a silent mechanism behind it all, a system so well organized that it operates behind the scenes of your financial life without you even noticing. When you look at those ready-made funds, with sophisticated names and packaging that promises security, diversification, and simplicity, it seems like you're looking at something made especially to protect you. But when you take a closer look and compare what really happens inside, you discover that a large part of your return is being drained by high fees, hidden costs, and structures that benefit the seller of the product much more than the investor. And the most curious thing is that all of this is presented as if it were the smartest choice for beginners. The hidden truth is that the cheap product for the bank is usually the most expensive product for you, because the real price isn't in the amount you pay, but in the return you miss out on. Funds with seemingly small management fees, but which, over the years, devour the growth curve of your assets. Packaged products that give a sense of convenience, but come loaded with restrictions that limit your potential, drain your freedom of decision, and keep you exactly where the market wants you to be. It's no wonder that so many investors spend a lifetime believing they are progressing when, in reality, they are trapped in a cycle perfectly designed to look like progress. This is the part of the journey where many people wake up, because they realize that it's not just about numbers. It's about mindset, about understanding how certain decisions that seem small have a huge impact down the line. And all of this works for a very simple reason. Most people have never been taught to compare rates, to analyze real costs, to look beyond the pretty words in the prospectus. We haven't been shown that there are better, less obvious, less publicized, but much more efficient alternatives. The market knows this and uses simplicity as emotional bait. That feeling of, leave it to me, I'll do it for you. When, in practice, what's being done is a constant diversion of your return. It's not your fault. That's how the game was designed. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because the structure behind these products wasn't created by chance. It was designed to capture the attention of those who are starting out, and at the same time, prevent them from evolving too quickly. When you understand this retention mechanism, you begin to see patterns that previously went unnoticed. Why certain funds are so widely advertised, why certain fees are never brought up in conversation, why the promise of security always comes with a hidden cost. There's an uncomfortable truth here. Whoever controls the product also controls the pace of your financial transformation. Before continuing, he leaves the following phrase in the comments. That makes sense to me. This is where the quietest and most dangerous part of this game begins. Because the prison built around the novice investor isn't made of numbers, rates, or charts. It's made of perception, of mindset, of a subtle sense of comfort that seems like progress, but is actually just a carefully constructed illusion. When someone enters the financial market and chooses those basic, beautifully packaged products, the brain receives a stimulus of accomplishment. I'm investing, I'm doing my part, I'm on the right track. And this feeling is so strong that for a while it's enough. It creates an emotional comfort that seems like progress, but is nothing more than a step that never becomes a ladder. It's a deceptive comfort that makes you believe you're growing, when in reality, you're just moving within the same quadrant. But this comfort comes at a price. The low profitability of these initial products not only slows down your growth, it practically eliminates the chance of building real wealth over the years. And the cruelest part is that people don't realize this at first. They look at their statement, see some return, and interpret that as a sign of success. The psychological impact is so profound that it completely removes the urgency to evolve, to question, to look outside the bubble that has been created around them. This is how many spend years believing that the market is just like that, without imagining that there is a higher level, a layer that operates with other products, other rules, another mentality. And here comes the hidden truth that almost no one talks about. While a person remains at level 1, the shark door simply doesn't exist for them. It doesn't appear, it's not offered, it's not mentioned. And it's not because you lack potential. It's not because you lack intelligence or discipline. It's because, for the traditional market, a trapped beginner is worth more than a free investor. This sentence may seem harsh, but it perfectly describes the mechanism that keeps millions of people at the same financial level for much longer than, well, they should. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the way this system is built goes far beyond fees and products. It involves emotional decisions, distorted perceptions, and an internal journey that sets the pace of your transformation. When you begin to see this pattern, something changes within you. The feeling that there is no other level begins to crumble, and small revelations emerge showing that the game is much bigger than it seemed at the beginning. And this shift in awareness opens up space for questions that, until then, seemed unnecessary or even too risky. Before we continue, write in the comments, "I'm on this journey too." And it is precisely at this point in the journey that something begins to stir within you. It's not a sudden change, not a leap forward, not a miracle product that solves everything. In fact, the first transformation happens silently, almost like an internal adjustment in your mindset. You begin to look at the numbers differently, to question things that previously seemed normal, to realize that certain decisions that were always automatic may be costing you more than you imagined. And when this awakening begins, it doesn't depend on the market, it depends on you. The paradigm shift occurs when the investor realizes that there isn't a special product waiting for them in some secret catalog. What exists is a new behavior, more conscious, more strategic, more mature. It's when you learn to honestly compare costs, facing the real impact of fees over the years. When you stop accepting the first option presented and start looking for independent, transparent products, without that exaggerated shine used only to attract beginners. It's when the understanding is born that the journey of building wealth is long, and that discipline, that unseen discipline that happens behind the scenes of your financial life, is worth more than any promise. Gradually, you increase your contributions, not because someone told you to, but because you begin to see the multiplier effect. You stop tolerating abusive fees because you understand that they erode exactly what you're trying to build. You learn to look at the composition of your assets and realize that there are more efficient structures than those pretty packages they offered you at the beginning. And, without realizing it, this change in attitude takes you to another scale. You surpass 100K, then 150K, and when you least expect it, you start approaching the first major milestone, 250K. This is where many people feel something shifting in the air. It's not visible yet, but it's perceptible. The market starts looking at you differently, even if no one says anything. Products that previously seemed inaccessible begin to appear in your peripheral vision. Certain conversations that never reached you start to make sense. And it's at this moment that the narrative of the shark door appears for the first time, albeit subtly. Because truth is simple. It's only when your behavior changes that doors that were previously invisible begin to appear. Access to better products isn't luck. It never has been. It's about level of awareness, level of discipline, level of financial maturity. And when you realize that, you understand that true evolution isn't about finding the right investment, but about becoming the person who has access to it. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because there's a point in this journey where perception changes completely. And it's precisely there that the journey ceases to be merely technical and becomes strategic. Before we continue, leave a comment below. That makes sense to me. When you finally cross that first major internal divide, something changes in how the market responds to you. It's not a party. There are no announcements. Nobody sends you an email saying, "Congratulations, you've unlocked another level." But suddenly, the scenario that once seemed rigid begins to open up in subtle ways. Fees, for example, cease to be those silent bites that eroded your assets. They drop drastically, almost as if the market were saying, "Now it makes sense for you to be here." And it's not because the products have become magical. It's because you've stopped consuming like a beginner and started behaving like someone who demands efficiency. This transformation in mindset changes everything. It's at this point in the journey that truly intelligent products emerge. Those that almost never appear in advertisements because they don't need to compete for attention. They aren't shoved down your throat because there's already enough demand among those who know what they're doing. More sophisticated funds, portfolios with clear logic, structures that don't mask fees or promise miracles. They simply deliver what they promise. And the hidden truth is that these products have always existed, but remained invisible while you were stuck in the beginner cycle. Now, they appear not because the market has become more generous, but because you've become more prepared. And another revelation begins to emerge. Certain opportunities simply aren't advertised. They don't appear in banners. They don't appear in commercials. They aren't part of that ready-made speech that every beginner receives. They arrive in another way, through referrals, through self-analysis, through consistent behavior. It's as if the market tests your maturity before opening certain paths. At this stage, you stop being treated as a client and start being treated as an investor. This changes the weight of the conversations, changes the type of offer that appears, even changes how platforms and institutions see you. And this is where one of the most profound turning points in this journey comes in. You realize that, from this point on, opportunities depend much less on the size of your money and much more on the type of decisions you make. Your financial behavior becomes the true filter, the key that opens or closes doors. You understand that wealth growth depends not only on how much you invest, but on how you position yourself in the game. And this realization has an enormous, almost liberating impact. It dismantles that old belief that wealth is about having more, when in fact, it's about thinking better. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject because there's a detail in this evolution that almost no one talks about, but that completely changes how you see the market and yourself. It's the moment when you understand that true financial freedom begins when you stop consuming like a beginner and start behaving like someone who wants to cross the shark door. Not as a distant dream, not as an unattainable fantasy, but as a natural consequence of the journey you are building. Before we continue, leave a comment below. I'm on this journey too. If you've made it this far, I can tell this topic has resonated with you in some way. These deeper conversations about mindset, choices, and financial transformation aren't for everyone. But if you've stayed until the end, it's because this type of content truly makes sense in your journey. So, before you go, leave a like in a very natural way, just so I understand that this exchange between us has truly added value to you. This helps this type of reflection continue to reach those who need to hear it. And if you feel that this path is part of your evolution, subscribe to the channel, not as an automatic ritual, but as a way to keep alive this space where we talk about what really matters behind the scenes of wealth building. Here, you are not treated as a beginner. You are treated as someone who is choosing to evolve. And since you made it to the very last second, leave a comment with the phrase, "I'm with you until the end." That way, I know who really walked with me throughout this conversation. It's always special to see who goes beyond the superficial and seeks this level of depth. And of course, if you want to continue this immersion, there's a video here that perfectly complements everything we've talked about. Click and continue with me there.